Welcome back to Sci-Fi and Fantasy Read Along. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great.
Hey, that was my line. No, I'm doing great.
I'm doing fantastic.
Of course, you would do fantastic.
I would.
Comics.
Yes.
Yes. Well, we're going to talk about Chapter 9. Is it 9, right?
Yeah.
9.
Chapter 9 today of 3 Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch by Philip K. Dick. It is a direct continuation, basically continues Chapter 8 almost directly. We begin with Barney Mayerson and, what's her name? Anne Hawthorne.
Anne Hawthorne, yeah.
Who has just come down from her candy experience. She's real sheepish, and Barney's going to walk her home.
Such a gentleman.
It's a very chivalrous thing to do.
This is their first night or day, first 24 hours on Mars, correct?
Yeah.
She was all the way over in another hovel, like half a mile away or something like that. And she's like, oh my God, this is a den of sin. And she's like, I don't know what I can do here. She runs to Barney and she takes all this candy, like almost selfishly. She didn't offer any to Barney. And like she just takes the whole candy bar and just like shoves it down. You guys were saying pre-show. Now, was this an attempt to find the religiosity of candy, or was it just full-on despair? And she's like, well, if the people are going to do it, I'm going to do it too.
I think it might have been avoidance, but she did suggest in last chapter that she was feeling kind of temptable, as in she would go along with most things that came to her if necessary, but that is last chapter, so...
Well, yeah, but it sums it up again here in like 3 pages in, where she says, I couldn't stop myself, Barney. It's like what Paul says about the corruptible man putting on incorruption. Does that make any sense?
None. Can you give me context?
The context is drugs and escapism are the corruption, and she finds herself corruptible, and so does everyone else. Some people find meaning in it, and some people don't, but for her, it doesn't fit.
Which she explains to Barney on the walk home when he asks her, how was it? And she's like, it was shallow. It was materialistic. It was all about having dyed hair and fancy cars and boyfriends.
Well, that's what the people in the colonies probably still want to have.
I mean, I can see the appeal if you don't have any of that stuff, but I can also see that getting really boring really quickly.
And we find that out since Anne was in a trip along with the other members of Barney's hovel.
Chickenpox prospect.
She got to hang out with them as they were exiting. So she probably had like an hour or two and probably got to stick with them about 20 or 30 minutes. She said they were like arguing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't seem like they were having fun.
Yeah, that didn't sound like it to me either.
The first time we saw them do it, it did seem, well, it was, oh my God, it was Sam and Fran going off on their own to have an experience with each other without the other members. So, a nice little getaway.
Sneaky.
I don't know if candy necessarily was the important thing. It was the fact that they were the ones doing it.
Yeah, but at the time, that was chapter 3, Sam went on and on and on about what a religious experience it is and how it's transcendent and how it effectively, I don't know about brings you closer to God, but it's certainly for him, it was a religious experience. And now you get it from a completely different perspective. Maybe it's worn off. I don't know how much time has passed between then and now. But now it seems like he's had a different opinion, or as a group, they're burnt out on it because it's effectively a false path towards transcendence.
Well, not only that, but they were also doing candy on the last night of doing candy before they got choosy and, in their hovel instead. Their whole premise was that they were going to show Barney a good time. Maybe they don't have good times that much anymore. And, a new person, would normally be. But here we have Anne just being flung into the room with them, and she doesn't know who any of those people
She's a
are.
religious
That must have been
nut.
Well,
well, there's that too. Sure.
She sort of is, and she sort of isn't. If she's a nut, she wouldn't give it up on a dime.
She is by their standards.
What I got out of this is that candy is like a false path towards finding God. You're never going to do it. And you're never gonna really find a religious experience because there's nothing there. It's hollow. It's superficial. It's make believe. You're never gonna find God in something that you yourself have created.
Well, it's certainly not satisfying to her, and she's tried it.
Yeah, and it's not really satisfying to the others either. It just took them longer to figure it out.
Sam already knew this. I think that was the point way back in chapter 3, was that he was ready for a more potent experience, that he was dissatisfied with it as it was.
But it was more than just a junkie looking for a stronger fix.
For him, yes. Not necessarily for the rest.
The others didn't even necessarily seem like that they were getting what Sam was getting out of it.
Hey, man, everybody needs purpose in their life, right? And maybe this is where Sam is deriving his purpose, because it's certainly not farming for him.
For any of them.
Yeah, I know. They let all their stuff go derelict. It's kind of embarrassing.
It is embarrassing.
All right, so you brought up Paul earlier when I was giving you grief about context, Philip.
Yes.
Because on their walk home, Anne says that it's a difficult thing. She realizes that she's temptable, and she's going to pray on it. Have you ever read Paul from the New Testament? And Barney's like, who?
She said Paul.
She didn't say from the New Testament.
And then she's all from the New Testament.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
well, Paul McCartney.
If you said, have you read Paul, I would be like, Paul who?
Paul who?
And then if you said from the New Testament, I would be like, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly.
But I mean, in the 24, 48 hours that Barney knows Anne, he knows that everything is going to be religion based.
He should know. So, yeah, absolutely.
If you know Paul, you know Paul in this situation.
All right. So, what is Paul's point? Because she brought up Paul for a reason, and it's not super deep. It's just a reason.
It was something about death, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
It was a little bit more than that. It says he was talking about our bodies and our souls, and said both have to die, and then they can be reborn again. And I don't think they mean reincarnation here, although they may. I was thinking about how we're reborn in heaven. It could be Buddhist as well, but I don't think so. And then there was the other part about being translated is the only hint we can have of it this side of death.
Paul said the first part of that, but the second part is all their inference afterwards. Paul said death is the enemy.
But that's where Candy. Gosh darn it, I tried really hard that time. That's where Candy, that's what they say, gets you as close to, I wouldn't say death, but as close to rebirth as possible while still being alive.
It's a taste, is what she said. It's a taste.
Mm-hmm. I think for her, she has this epiphany or realization that the pathway to God is not going to be found through materialism and superficialness.
Surely she knew that before she tried candy.
Hey, you don't got me over a barrel because I see it too.
Yeah.
That's kind of the real reason why it just felt like it was so much more despair when she was taking that candy.
There was a lot of despair that drove her to take it. But I'm wondering if it's not a little bit more subtle than you're saying, Philip. She never tried it before, for one. And she heard about it. She knows that people are likening it to taking communion and possibly like this rebirth. And so she wanted to try it, first of all. And she did. And it did not pass muster for her. But she probably has super high standards in the first place.
I don't know what communion she took, but it didn't do anything for me.
Come on. I mean, yeah.
What? One little sip of sweet wine and a bland cracker? No way.
Yeah, tasteless cracker and watered down grape juice. I mean,
yes, but in this world, they have candy. I don't understand the connection myself, but you do become another person. You think you're another person. You commune with other human beings.
That's pretty powerful.
It's super potent. It could be your religious experience, and people do take it that way, and she wanted to try it, but it, to her, is a materialistic thing that she doesn't like. But Choosy sounds like the real deal. But then again, she's just buying into the advertising.
Yeah, but she said we could have it now. And she emphasized now. We could have it now. And you find out she's had a whole bag of it, of Choosy.
Choosy?
Yeah.
She has no Choosy.
Yes, she does.
No, she wants to buy it.
No one has Choosy.
Nobody has it.
Nobody has Choosy.
I thought she said she had
Tomorrow
a bag
night.
of it.
No. Oh, she has a bag of she has a bunch of pamphlets.
Oh,
is what she has.
Okay.
Advertising for Choosy.
Okay.
So should we just talk about Choosy's advertising?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, they have a tidy phrase that I think this would appeal to a lot of people.
I would try it based on this advertising.
They say God promises eternal life. We can deliver it.
What does that mean?
That's blasphemy to say that. They talk about it.
Yeah.
It's
should
for
definitely...
sure blasphemy.
Yeah.
Firstly, using God to sell something right off the bat sounds blasphemous to me.
And yet,
but when you are so arrogant as to say that you can do what God promises,
yeah,
it's like it's now. This can happen now. God promises is in the future. You got to do all this stuff to make it happen. All you got to do is take choosy. Now.
That line right there was my first hint of revelation. Ooh, revelation.
Are you making a pun?
Yes, exactly what I was doing. I was making a pun. And I know you hate puns, but it was good. I had a revelation, but not a religious one, just, a literary revelation.
Mm-hmm. I told Yule in the last episode that he should be punished for making one.
Oh, what's just because you hate puns?
It is in itself a pun.
Oh, ha ha ha. Anyway.
Ha ha ha.
A pun is a
punish.
Pun?
I missed it, but that's good. Punish him. I like it. Oh, sorry. I'm not that fast. That's why I get tickled, because it's like puns are just like tickle the intellect, and then,
Yeah, just tickle it.
They do not tickle my intellect.
Just a little tickle.
What does God promise? He promises eternal life. We're kind of familiar with this concept if we grew up in Christian families, right? So what does it mean for a product to do that, though?
Man, if a pill or whatever they use to ingest it can promise you everlasting life, it's hard to not want to take it.
Well, that's what the advertisement claims, is it can offer eternal life. And it is blasphemous. Barney thinks of it as such. He thinks that Palmer Eldritch should be struck down for it, but alas, that is not going to happen. And they arrive back at Flaxback Spit, her new home.
Well, here's my epiphany coming off of that pamphlet. Well, you remember that question, or you had brought up the thing about the big lie and the big truth?
That was before we began recording, but yes.
Yeah, well, it's that section right there. And I read that section, and I'm like, I had this massive epiphany. Palmer Eldritch is the Antichrist.
Okay.
And this whole book,
possibly.
this whole book is an allegory for the Antichrist coming and taking over. And you know how it's like aliens are inside you? Well, the aliens from the proc system are like demons that possess people and take their form.
Is that true?
I don't know if that's true at all.
In the book, they talk about, we don't even know if Palmer Eldritch hasn't been eaten up and taken over and all this other stuff. I don't know why they suppose that, but they have. So there is at least, people
it did, and that was one of the things they said, is something took his form or ate him up from the inside.
I think of like Men in Black when I
know
think
nobody's
that,
seen him.
The guy who wears the skin suit, he kills the person and jumps inside.
What?
The big cockroach guys.
Was there more to your theory, Philip?
Yeah, it says, an evil visitor oozing over us from the proc system. He said to himself, yada, 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 offering us what we've been praying for over 2,000 years, which is the return of Christ. So we're not getting Christ, and that's supposed to bring us...
Obviously, right?
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, I think this is the Antichrist come to promise us salvation and promise us eternal life, and it's all fake. It's all a sham.
That sounds good. I like it, actually.
I don't think he brings. I don't think there's any Judaism in this, because
I wouldn't know.
I just feel that Christ isn't accepted as God. That's the main thing I know. And it's just kind of interesting, when you think of other religions and how these things might play out when you're reading this, this doesn't sing to me necessarily.
Well, they glossed over it, but at the very last sentence of that, my epiphany there, where it talks about Palmer Eldritch being, the Antichrist, it says, he, capital He, who has protected us in the past, simply sits passive. And then he's talking about Christ at that point. And what he's saying is Palmer Eldritch has come, and he's the Antichrist, while he, Jesus, is just sitting passively by and doing nothing.
God passively offers you eternal life, but we're going to give it.
Yes, but there's no salvation there because it's fake. It's false. It's heresy.
It's a prison.
It does seem like it's going to be, yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's the whole crux of everything, is that these people are coming or these things are coming to take us over. And they're going to use this implement. They're going to implement this thing into our being.
All they're going to do is give you the option to take it, and you're going to because you've been craving it for 2,000 years and didn't know it, and then thereby they will control you, I guess. I don't think they're coming, though. I think that was it was implied that they were going to do it remotely.
Well, I think this is the remotely bit, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It's a good metaphor or an analogy. I guess it's a metaphor that you're identifying, Philip. But did you guys like the frog metaphor that the author used? We're back home at Flaxback Spit.
Mm-hmm.
She has arrived. She's at the door. She's got her lantern. She opens the door. She puts it inside. And then she turns around to Barney with her arms out and says, "Oh, Barney."
God, this guy. He's like, run away. Let's come on back to my hovel.
He does.
We'll get married.
He does.
He does this again.
He's known her for 2 days.
Well, 2 days, but, it's going to be 50 years of knowing her for
Man, they spent the flight together, most of it not talking, and then they just spent like a 30-minute walk back home or something. How long does it take to walk half a mile in the dark?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, so they spent about 20 minutes together, not counting the time they spent on the flight, and he's already proposing marriage. I mean, it's just kind of nuts.
Well, but she's giving her body to him right now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought you had Christian morals. Like, at least wait, do it in the sanctity of marriage.
The future. I don't know, like what future you live in, but in the future, based on the 60s, free love was the thing.
Maybe so, but I'm sorry, you can't be Christian and promiscuous.
Why is sex immoral?
Well, that's what the Bible says.
Does it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's not immoral. It's when you aren't married to the person, it's immoral.
I didn't.
Right?
I thought it was just if you were married and you were having sex outside the marriage, that was immoral.
You mean adultery?
Yeah.
No, adultery is a thing you don't need to be married to commit.
Somebody has to be married for someone to commit adultery.
I don't think that's the way it works.
There's
one person has to be married in the pair.
I don't think so. There's this
thou shalt not commit adultery beforehand.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, but this is
Why
different.
don't we look up what adultery means? Because
go ahead.
somebody has to cheat on somebody for adultery to be a problem.
Oh, I can't wait. I hope this stays in.
It's just like, obviously, we haven't cared enough in our lives to know what it means.
No, I'm telling you, man. You can commit adultery without being married.
Voluntary sexual intercourse between a married person and a person who is not his or her spouse.
All right, fine. But still, Barney's is all game for doing it within the sanctity of marriage as soon as he possibly can. And she's like, no, let's do it now. And I'm like, she's supposed to be the moral one. But that's beside the point.
He ignored her in the last chapter when she said that she was down DTF. And now she's like crawling into his arms and telling him that it's time. Now, do it now, Barney. And so...
Was he being gentlemanly before? I mean, he
did
think that she was attractive on the flight.
But he didn't go for it then either.
On the flight?
But why on the flight?
In his hovel, chicken pox prospects.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's down. I mean,
dude, she didn't even remember his name.
Well, they were having sex when she doesn't remember it. And she could be excused. They've known each other for 20 minutes.
Right.
Anyway, so this is really clumsily written, kind of irritating scene.
A little
in my
unbelievable.
And then there's the frog analogy at the end. Frog metaphor, excuse me.
Tell me about this frog
I don't want to know, to be honest.
I don't know. Like, it's what does greenless mean? What does greenless mean? I mean, it's not good.
Well, hey, do you remember when Isaac Asimov was criticized for not writing about women, and his excuse was, I don't understand women, therefore I don't write about them? I'm sorry. Philip K. Dick should have taken a lesson from Isaac Asimov.
On how to not write?
Yeah, exactly. How to not to write about women, something you don't understand. Because to me, this was clumsy, it was uncomfortable, it was forced.
It was. The entire act of it in the book was clumsy and forced, and they couldn't breathe.
Yeah, because they're having sex on the surface of Mars where it's frigid, cold, and there's no air.
At night.
Yeah.
Again, this is still coping going on. Probably for Barney also. I mean, he didn't take advantage of his hovel, although he did kiss her as she was going under. They were talking about getting it on in the dark earlier in the chapter, this chapter.
I don't know if that's what they were talking about.
What were they talking about?
I don't know. I meant to ask you guys about that too, but we did kind of bypass it. Philip thinks
I forgot
that's
how it was phrased,
else.
but it was basically like, well, you know,
you would regret it later.
You would regret it later. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, you know, putting out for me now. And again, I think it was Barney being somewhat gentlemanly.
You might be right.
You only get 2.
Third time he's going in.
Third time.
Yeah.
I say no. I don't say anything.
Fine, let's just do it.
Yeah.
That's a Barney.
I had this thought, though, that, you know, Barney at this point in this book seems to be the chivalrous one. And he's died and he's gotten, I wouldn't say gotten morality, but it seems he's really more cognizant of his failings and he's aware of them and he detests that part of himself. And so this woman comes into his life and she's throwing herself at him 3 times and eventually he gives in. But it's like the temptation, I would say it's not the temptation of Christ, but it's a real close analogy.
What is that?
The temptation of Christ?
That's the devil in the desert for 40 days, right?
Exactly. And Jesus tells him no multiple times and he doesn't give in because, you know, Jesus is perfect. He's like, no, I can't be tempted.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Barney's just immortal, and no matter how hard he tries, he's like, all right, fine.
He is in a desert.
I think we can excuse the clumsy. I mean, firstly,
hold on, Yule.
This is one page.
I know.
One page.
I know. It's one paragraph.
Page. It's not even.
It's
the
one
whole
paragraph.
act is one page.
Yeah, that's great.
And it is funky, and it is clumsy and clunky and everything. And they didn't even get out of their entire spacesuits.
They dare not,
or whatever.
They dare not. The only part that I really honestly had a problem with, I mean, mostly it was just humorous to me because I think that like terms like make love to me are ridiculous. But the last paragraph, which I think corresponds to her orgasm, has to do with the dissection of a frog and how if you apply electricity to a dead frog's legs, they will move.
Oh, he's tickling her.
He is causing her to move and do things, and it was just really, really hard to understand. It was hard to read. He used words that don't exist. I mean, it was bad, and I noticed the entire time, and I didn't enjoy reading it.
You were just uncomfortable the entire time.
I don't care if they're having sex. That's fine.
Well, you know, the irony here is this may be just Philip K. Dick not being comfortable writing about the subject matter.
Hey, like I said, one page. I got to admit, I was thinking I'm going to have to explore this frog situation again because...
Did you ever dissect a frog in science?
Yeah. And I never did any of that electric stuff, though. They were probably smart to keep electricity away from me because...
it works with fire, too. If you put frog legs in a pan, they'll jump in the fire.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Man. Huh.
I just don't understand what the point is of comparing her to a dead frog.
Clearly, never mind.
I know where you were going with that too.
I don't know where that was going, but I know where I could take it.
All right, so Barney drops her off, and he starts to head home. Sometime later, it's indistinct about how long this whole thing took place, whatever, how long it took him to get rid of her. But he does eventually start heading back to his own prospect. But along the way, in the dark, he comes across a ship that did not use any retro jets to land. It came down stealth.
And he ran into it.
He walks right up to it, and then out comes a man who happens to be a disc jockey.
When you say it like that, it just sounds crazy.
In addition to reading this book, I also listened to a recording of it.
Yeah.
And the narrator, when the DJ comes out, it's like, hi there, you know, very DJ voice.
Yeah, nice.
And and I'm like, wow, I really feel the DJ now.
This is Alan Fane, who we have heard about. He and his wife are DJs on one of the satellites that orbit Mars. He works for Candy. And he's come down to the surface to surreptitiously give Barney his code book and a little vial of illness.
Yeah, the whole marching orders are spelled out right here.
Yeah, for sure.
This is some that Barney has to take in. I mean, this is where I really question why Barney is so willing to do this, and maybe will he not do it? Because this is,
They keep adding to what he has to do.
For sure. And like the thing that they're offering to give him, he doesn't really want necessarily anyway.
Yeah, but why does he say? Why is he willing?
Even beforehand, when he was walking Anne home, Barney was saying that he did something wrong to land here. And it was, well, this is a sin that he committed, basically. And we know he committed a sin against Leo.
A perceived sin.
And so he's taking that on. And I don't know if that's enough to, I mean,
it's not enough for
send me to Mars?
Yeah, well, the word he uses specifically is atonement.
That's what Fane uses. I would use a different word. I would use the word penance.
Well, either way, Barney wasn't using it.
No.
Either.
He never used those words. He did use the word sin, but he did suggest that he thought that he had to pay for that sin, and that is penance. Atonement is to at one. It means at one to rectify a broken relationship, and he's doing both of those things by trying to help Leo.
Just coming to Mars is paying for your sins.
I agree. That's what he said. And now they're foisting other stuff on him. In addition to having to take Choosy and get sick, now he has to actually get sick.
Well, the one thing I'll say is that when he chose to do Mars, that had nothing to do with Leo. That was, as far as Leo's concerned. Leo's like, I hear you're choosing to go to Mars. I would love for you to do this stuff for me.
Let me piggyback on you. Do this for me also.
Exactly. And now we're finding out what that has to be. So maybe coming to Mars technically wasn't him atoning for, full atonement or full penance, or maybe even considered that. But now that he's doing what he's doing for Leo, that is the penance. That is the atonement, whatever we want to call it. And what he's doing is some messed up stuff, if you ask me.
Keep in mind, before he left Earth, essentially he was bearing all his sins to himself, if not everyone else. He was bearing his sins in front of anybody willing to listen. It wasn't like that, but
he was foisting them off on other people who didn't have a choice, right?
He was a person that, in all tense, he basically was committing suicide. He was settling up. And he was telling people he loved them in some way.
Or will you marry me? Them.
Or exactly.
Well, he never came out and said it, but internally he was bearing his sins.
Men don't say I love you, Philip.
Or I'm sorry.
Yeah, none of that.
Not a real man.
Not a real man. Barney's a weirdo.
So I think this goes all in line with he bore his sins, and I don't know, there was no priest in there to say you must atone or you must have penance. But we've skipped that part. Now we're going to the penance and atonement part for everything he feels bad about doing.
Which is funny.
That's the problem when you self-diagnose. You might only have to go to a food bank and you might be okay. Just 1 week.
Do you remember that book that he had that she had read, Anne had read, and he had not? It was
I remember that,
The Imitation of Christ, and it's like a parable, an allegory about a guy who is burdened with sin and is trying to get to heaven. And now we've got Barney who is burdened with sin and trying to get to heaven.
Exactly.
So, yeah, interesting. All right, so what is the illness? What's in the vial that he's been given?
Metrazole.
That's not what he's given.
Yeah.
No.
He's given...
No.
What it's
Oh,
Metrazole.
it's something else like Metrazole.
Yeah.
They didn't describe it. It was something from Io.
That's right. Possibly from Denkmal, the guy that does the E-therapy. And it is going to give Barney epilepsy. The mysterious Q variety.
I did look up Metrazole a little bit. Its purpose was to induce seizures. It was used heavily for shock Metrazole therapy. And a lot of people were dying from it.
Instead of shock treatment or something
for
that?
schizophrenia. So they give you both combinations. And I don't know why that was more effective or less effective. And then they would use it heavily for medications treating seizures. So they would induce seizures. And then they would give you something to treat them. But either way, it sounds like a horrible way to experiment on human beings.
In this era, they were performing lobotomies commonly.
In the 60s? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the state of medicine at that time was not great. It's not great now, but I mean, I think it was barbaric at the time. What?
Nothing. I'm just the medical advancements are amazing.
They are amazing.
Right now. And I mean, when they first, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. They were putting like first pig hearts in people and stuff like that.
Oh, they tried that again
got,
recently.
Yamaha ones. It doesn't have to be hearts. Let's not get hung up on that. Titanium knees and all this other stuff. And medicine might not be, it's fallible for sure, but I mean, it's pretty.
It's getting better. All right, so Barney, it is a very heavy burden that is being placed onto Barney, and he recognizes this, and he's like, well, what's in it for me? Because I think he's starting to realize that people are trying to take advantage of him. And Fane, on his own, I'm pretty sure, says, we'll get you off of Mars.
He has a whole thing that he says that they'll have to do, like, I'll have to burn your fingerprints and all this stuff. You'll have to go hang out at Leo's place for a couple years.
Well, this is a man that could affect that. Like, he could actually get Barney off the planet. He's obviously got a ship right here.
Yeah, but Barney's like, well, what if I don't want that? And the DJ, Alan, is like, well, of course you want. Nobody wants to be here. Everybody wants to get off. This is your perfect opportunity. So he's dangling that carrot out in front of him.
That was an executive decision, too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he just made it up.
There's no way Leo was like, yeah, tell him we'll get him off the planet. There's no way that happened. You'll be back in your old job in like 2 years' time. No problem.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was just all made up. Yes, exactly.
I think he'll just be murdered if he does it.
Fane suggests that Barney's life will be at risk the minute they file suit. Like Palmer Eldritch's people are going to come for him. Barney just wants to go home. And Fane is like, let me tell you about Doberman's Law. Be careful with that girl. And Doberman's Law is really, really stupid. It's just that relationships that are super intense are proportionately short. Right?
Especially when something bad happens to him,
well,
right?
Doberman was a guy on Mars. He was the first person to get married on Mars and the first person to get divorced on Mars.
He must have fallen hard and crashed.
Yeah.
It reminds me actually of the thing that Tyrell said to Roy Batty in Blade Runner, the first movie, right? He said, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long.
I don't think it applies.
Really? Those intense relationships burn out.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Do you see it now?
Now
do you
I
see it now?
Hey, you've got to explain it because
okay.
I always thought that meant like, athletes and incredible people.
I like how Fane was saying that he saw Barney coupling in infrared.
Yeah.
And he asked Barney, well, who's the girl? And Barney won't let him know.
He's like, it was dark. I have no idea. I think he was warning Barney off about her because she exists, and they want Barney to do a job for them, and the girl might get in the way.
Right, or distract him, or change his mind, or emotionally compromise him from his mission, whatever else.
Right.
Well, sure. I mean, if he gets involved with the woman and doesn't want to be, whoever that woman is.
The dark-haired girl, remember? Getting
seizures constantly is probably not going to be a very good thing for that.
That's right. Yes, that is in there.
And part of the Doberman effect is also that I think was that like when something bad happens to a person, it lessens the amount of time that they want to be around you or something like that, or it gives them
look at the law again, because I don't remember that.
There was something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Nonetheless, maybe he was like in addition to thinking about the Doberman's Law, he was saying that having these seizures probably
it's not going to help.
Great thing.
It's not going to help. I mean, he's going to be having grand mal seizures, which are violent seizures.
Oh, they talked about coma and that they would be able to solve it. When he comes back.
They have an antidote, miraculously enough, that they'll give him some year hence when the litigation's all over. That's crazy, but that's the price he's paying.
I don't know if any of that's worth it.
I don't either.
No matter how bad I feel about something.
I don't either.
I mean, I could still go to sleep, I think.
He says that he's going to take the toxin, and he is not going to leave Mars, whatever Fane offers him. He's going to make it or break it or not on Mars, hopefully with Anne, but if not, by himself or with someone else. And he's going to start farming in the morning, and that's the next step. Or the first step? I don't know. It might be the first step.
He's got to get choosy, make a big old production of it in front of his hovel mates. Mm-hmm. He's got to use it, and then he has to take the toxin.
Yep.
So that's That's the deal there.
I don't know. It's crazy, but at the same time, like, it does make sense that if he's not actually sick and they test him, they'll be like, you're not sick. So it's good that he's going to be sick. Hopefully they don't detect why he's sick, but he's assured that it's a pretty sophisticated thing and that it won't be detectable, or at least not identifiable. I don't know. It was a strange chapter. And it's like 3 in a row that are kind of just humdrum and hopefully working up to something.
All of a sudden, I just feel like this is going to be some courtroom drama at the end. I mean, it's just going to be lawsuits all of a sudden, you know? It's
like Law and Order.
One of our patrons did say that the book picked up in the last 4 chapters. Like, that's when the book happens, is in the last 4 chapters.
Oh, excellent.
So I'm hoping that that's the case, because I think we only have
4 chapters.
4 chapters to go.
Oh, well, I guess this is it.
I have to. I'm just being honest. I'm not loving the middle part of this book right now.
Yeah, it was a little unclear.
It's unclear. It seems unfocused.
This might be the part of the book that he least liked to write, or maybe except for like when we're talking about like the religion and the philosophy behind that and everything, he does seem to be digging that. But maybe he's not skilled enough to be able to write about it also.
I don't know if he's well informed enough to be able to write about it.
Right.
Well, it seems like he might be a dilettante. You know, he only has a very superficial knowledge of some of the stuff that he's talking about, because how hard is it
definitely that's me.
Well, it's me too, but I mean, how hard is it to draw, create an analogy and keep with it? What is the deal with the frog? He mentioned a frog pond at the end, too.
Yeah, yep. Frog was mentioned twice.
Well, I mean, it's in Barney's head, so whatever he's got going on.
No, the sex stuff was not about Barney. That was the author describing her having an orgasm.
Oh, okay.
So you think. I
mean, she did do that big old moan beforehand, and then he giggled.
I do not want to accept your analogy.
They both laughed at each other before sex when he asked to marry him. Barney said, "Hey, Anne, marry me," and she giggled
because of the chickenpox prospect. Yeah,
sure.
Or that's what she said.
So she was laughing at that, but not at his marriage proposal.
And yet she said the answer is obviously no.
Exactly.
What does that mean? Is she smart enough to know that 20 minutes is not long enough to know somebody?
Probably. I mean, this is like a Wild West kind of thing. Maybe you could go into town
just serious.
And pick up a wife.
I mean, it's like they just met. It's the most unromantic setting. It's like they're on this.
Well, I don't know if it's unromantic. I mean, it's at night. It's cold.
It's freezing cold.
You're very emotional.
You can't breathe.
You guys are both very emotional.
You can't breathe. And she's like, "Are you dying?"
Well, my 2 bits are. I'm hoping that the next 4 chapters, as you said, become significantly more, I don't know about exciting, but certainly more clear, enthralling, understandable. And
I'd like some payoff for the BS of the last 3 chapters. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I maintain. I think this book is an allegory about the second coming, not the second coming of Christ, the coming of the Antichrist. And I think Palmer Eldritch.
So the first coming.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yes.
Like, do you remember in the very beginning when Leo Bolero said, it's like, I wonder why Palmer Eldritch went to Prox? It's like, maybe it was to find God. And he didn't. He found the devil.
Yeah. I mean, it's very reasonable. I see what you're saying, and I understand everything, and it all falls into place pretty well. But I will reserve judgment. I think you're onto something, but I will reserve judgment.
Well, I'm not a religious scholar either.
Another chapter down, another chapter coming in the near future, chapter 10. I hope Luke's right. I really do hope it. I don't want to put this one down and be like, nope, didn't like this one.
I mean, most people that read it have said that they liked it that I've talked to. And I've talked to quite a few people about it.
Yeah, did you ask them about the middle chapters?
No, I haven't.
You should ask Jeff about the middle chapters.
I will.
Yeah.
I'll ask some of my customers too.
Yeah.
I mean, living in Berkeley, science fiction.
Well, that's
and
where he's from too.
And also, he's from the area exactly. And so there's a lot of people out here that I can talk to that have a working knowledge of these science fiction books, especially Philip K. Dick.
Well, it is among his most famous books. So
I assume, like, the next chapter, we're going to get the whole drug deal, or maybe they'll start with, like, the choosy being purchased already, you know, and maybe there'll be a trip or not.
Oh, sure.
I don't know.
Got to have something.
And then he has to take his toxin, and then I guess the courtroom drama begins.
I guess so.
Well, you know, to be the devil's advocate here, I've never read Philip K. Dick before, and I think maybe you can get more out of it if you're more familiar with the author and his writing style and what have you. But
you're not getting it yet?
no, I'm just saying.
You're not
I know,
into it?
I'm not. I mean, I'm reading it. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm merely saying that I'm not familiar with the author and his work and his writing style. That's all
I've
saying.
read better by him, for sure. At least at this point.
Well,
but who knows? 4 chapters, your mind can be changed in the last 4 chapters, big time.
Sure.
I mean, we're going to remember this book based on how we leave it. When we're done with the book, how we feel about it, that's how we're going to remember this book.
Amen,
Let's
brother.
finish it, and then we'll worry about it. All right, Chapter 9 coming up in a few days. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you then.
Chapter 10 coming up.
Yeah,
in a few days.
10.
Bye, all.
Bye.